Good morning. Call the meeting of the Rice Creek Board of Managers to order for Wednesday, February
Recording in
14th.
progress.
Good morning. I'll call this meeting of the Rice Creek Watershed District Board of Managers to order for February 14th. And I see that all managers are present with the exceptions of President Bradley and Manager Robinson with previous notice. So set the agenda. There's some proposed revisals here, Mr. Administrator. Would you take us through those, please?
Yes. Board of Managers staff would propose that the board amend the agenda to include the common CARP program, the annual contracts, the fee schedule adjustment, as well as the Centerville inspection joint powers agreement. Both the fee schedule in Centerville and common CARP were all discussed at the workshop, but we handed out a proposed revised agenda. It is posted on our website and available by hard copy here.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the proposed agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And before we go any farther with the minutes, we need to appoint a secretary for the day, and I propose that we appoint Manager Wagaman.
I second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And so now for the approval of the minutes for January 24th, 2024 meeting. Any changes?
Mr. President, I'd move to approve the January 24th, 2024 regular meeting minutes.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. The consent agenda is the next item on the agenda. We have two applications here, 2402 and 2403. I'll move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion?
2 and 3.
All in favor, say aye.
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 3-0. Let's see. The next item on the agenda is the Water Quality Grant Program Cost Share Application. We have one of those today. And Miss Molly, I reckon you're next.
Thank you, Board of Managers, for your consideration today. We have one application for the Water Quality Grant Program. It is located in Ramsey County, R24-01, for a shoreline stabilization and restoration on Turtle Lake in the city of Shoreview. If you have any questions, I invite you to ask them now.
Managers. Staff.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the water quality grant consent agenda as outlined in the above table in accordance with the RCWD staff's recommendation based on the established program guidelines dated February 8th, 2024.
Second.
And this is for 50% cost share, not
Not-
$7,500, not to
Right.
exceed 50%, correct?
Correct.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a public hearing of the stormwater management grant request from the cities of Arden Hills, Fridley, New Brighton, White Bear Township, and Willerny. The regular meeting of the Board of Managers is now in recess, and the public hearing is open on Rice Creek Watershed District's proposed selection of projects for funding through the district's stormwater management grant program. In accordance with state law, the notice of this hearing was published in 2 consecutive weeks of the St. Paul Pioneer Press and mailed to all the cities within the Watershed District, as well as the district's 4 counties. I ask those of you in attendance remotely to mute your microphones until it's your turn to speak. The purpose of this hearing is to receive comments from the public on the projects that the board is considering for cost share assistance from the cities of Arden Hills, Fridley, New Brighton, White Bear Township, and Willerny. Before the watershed can provide funds for capital work of these applicants, state law requires that the Board of Managers hold a public hearing, receive public comments, and make a judgment on each selected project is sound and cost-effective project to help fulfill our water resource goals. First, I'll ask Mr. Will Roach, a watershed technician and inspector, to give a brief presentation on the proposed projects. When his remarks are completed, the floor will be open for any members of the public who wish to address the board. For those of you joining us in person, please come forward to the podium, state your name, your address for the record. And for those of you joining us remotely, we ask you to be recognized and also state your name and address for the board, and I will recognize you. Speak clearly and state your name, and I already did that, okay. If you have a written copy of your statement or any other documents that you'd like to submit, please inform the board and the district staff, and we'll provide you direction on how to submit them for the record. So during the public comment, the managers are welcome to ask questions of the commentators to clarify their remarks, but I may also ask Mr. Roach and other representatives of the project applicants to respond to any technical questions raised. The managers will hold their comments about the projects until the public hearing is closed, and at that time, the board will have the opportunity to discuss the projects. And the board's action for selected projects for funding is tentatively scheduled for February 28, 2024, regular meeting, so that'd be our next meeting. So, Will, would you please proceed?
Yes, thank you, Manager Waller, and good morning, Board of Managers. My screen share going here. So as noted, this is the public information meeting required under 103B 251 for the Stormwater Management Grant Program. For presentation outline for this morning, just briefly going over the program goals and guidelines, then going through the application summaries and next steps. So the stormwater management goal management program has several goals. First and foremost, it's to encourage local LGUs and other entities within the district to explore innovations in addressing stormwater quality and quantity retrofit opportunities in their municipalities, and then looking for development or infrastructure projects to incorporate those in. As part of that, we like to foster a close collaboration with our partners so that we can help provide general guidance and input throughout the application process and the program. And then to also see these opportunities include a education or demonstration opportunity for members of the public. And then lastly, of course, is just to help defray local costs in the district-wide interest of improving stormwater quality and reducing flood risk. So for the grant program guidelines, for the 2024 program year, applications were due on December 21st, 2023. Like past years, we had a total of $300,000 available for project cost share funding, with a maximum allowable amount of $100,000 to be awarded to projects. The program does have some specific language regarding stormwater reuse irrigation projects. However, we did not receive any such projects this program year. Applicants are also required to provide a 50% match funding for their projects. And for this year, we had 5 applications requesting a total of $375,800. Those applications came from Fridley, Arden Hills, New Brighton, White Bear Township, and Willerny, as you can see here on the district map. Moving on to the project summaries. Starting off with City of Arden Hills, this project would consists of the installation of 9 new sump manholes with saffle baffles to be installed. This would be done during a overall road reconstruction project, with the targeted water body being Valentine Lake, and a total project cost of $189,300. The city has put in a grant request for $94,650. So the water quality benefits associated with this project, based on the modeling provided, indicates an annual removal of 7.05 pounds of total phosphorus and 2,338 pounds of total suspended solids being removed from the system. You can see here, these are some images from the plan set that was provided that shows those areas in the darker gray being the part of the work area for that project. The next application is the City of Fridley. So this project proposes the installation of a hydrodynamic device at Channel Road that would help capture sediment and pollutant runoff from stormwater runoff prior to discharging to Rice Creek. Like the Arden Hills application, this project would be done as part of an overall road rehabilitation project, with the targeted water bodies being Rice Creek and Lock Lake. The total project cost for this is $60,000, with the city requesting a grant of $30,000. And the water quality benefits associated with this, as indicated in their modeling, would show an annual removal of 0.987 pounds of total phosphorus and 289 pounds of suspended solids. Here you can see the aerial provided in that application, the Channel Road with that red dot showing the proposed location of that hydrodynamic device. Third application is City of New Brighton. This is a proposed second trunk storm sewer line on 4th Street, that would reduce in street flooding and potential adjacent property damage. Targeted water body for this would be Long Lake, with a total project cost of $851,994. The city is requesting a grant of $100,000. In terms of flood control benefits, based on the modeling provided, we would see a reduction in floodplain elevation by 1.7 feet during a 100-year rainfall event. Then again, here on the plan, so you can see the gray hat, the darker gray coloration here, just showing the area of that work. The next application is White Bear Township. So this project, the city has purchased a vacant lot adjacent to Bel Air Park, where they are looking to construct a new stormwater pond. The park has an existing stormwater pond that has frequent overtopping issues during 2-year and 5-year rainfall events. So this secondary pond would help address that overtopping issue, as well as help in sediment dropout from stormwater runoff, as well as reduce total flow rates to White Bear Lake. Total project cost for this would be $236,000. The city did put in a grant request for $118,000. So as noted earlier, typically the maximum amount we could award is $100,000. The city did indicate on their application that they'd be willing to accept funding equal to less than that requested amount, and staff also followed up with, district staff followed up with city staff as well, and received confirmation on that from the Public Works Director at White Bear Township. Here's the aerial view from the plan set, where you can see the vacant lot here, as well as its proposed dimensions for that stormwater pond. And then the last application is City of Willarney. So this is their Craig Place storm sewer improvement project. So the city is looking to replace a 6-inch drain tile with a more traditional trenchless storm sewer system. And the intent for that is to help reduce potential flood risk associated in a local neighborhood. For that targeted water body is White Bear Lake with a project cost of $66,300 and a requested grant of $33,150. Just one thing to note for this application, they do not have modeling yet available to show that flood risk reduction. So that would just be something staff would request at that time that it be provided and reviewed by the district engineer to ensure functionality and effectiveness per the program guidelines. And then lastly, here you can see the plan set from the application that shows that proposed manhole and storm sewer. And then at its February 7th CAC meeting, staff went over these applications with the CAC members and calculated out the weighted scores here. You can see from, this is from staff, CAC, and engineering review. In the order of ranking here, White Bear Township, Fridley, Arden Hills, New Brighton, and then Willarney. So as indicated earlier in the presentation, with these 5 applications, the total cost is about $75,000 over budget of what is allowable under the program. So while no direct action is needed on these applications at this time, staff would pose a question to Board of Managers on if additional funding would like to be located for these projects. Just keeping in mind the stormwater grant program is meant to be a competitive program, and that if additional funds are drawn from elsewhere, it may affect other programs in the watershed budget. And then lastly here for next steps, as Manager Waller noted, action is scheduled for the February 28th board meeting. There'll be consideration and discussion of staff, CAC, and engineering reviews, and that approval of the resolution order for the projects under 103B.251.
Well, thank you very much, Will. Managers, do you have any questions? Manager Wagner.
I had a question on the White Bear Lake application, and it was brought to my attention, which I don't remember this happening, but I was told that they came to us for funding a couple of years ago to clean that other pond. And I don't think we approved it. I don't know if anybody remembers or not, but I'm wondering if they cleaned that out. You're saying it's overtopping. Was that ever cleaned, the other one?
So thank you for the question, Manager Wagman. So yeah, you are correct. The township did submit an application in 2022, I believe. That was ultimately denied at the time because it would be considered just general maintenance of an existing BMP, which those kinds of projects do not qualify under the grant program. A similar question came up at the CAC meeting, and I did reach out to the city staff about that. I believe per that response, maintenance for that BMP is upcoming.
So they plan on using both?
Correct, yep.
And they're saying the one is not large enough, even cleaned out, to take care of the issue they're having?
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Marcy, you have questions?
Well, I have a question about the New Brighton proposal. And just to clarify that, because we're working on 2, 3, and 5, Ramsey County 2, 3, and 5, is this one of the projects that is in the suite of items that need to be done on that particular flooding issue? And I mean, where does this fit into the whole scheme that we've developed?
Mr. Administrator, you have an answer for that?
You bet. Board of Managers, yes. There are numerous locations of flooding that were concerned to the 3 petitioning cities for the RCD 2, 3, and 5 suite of projects. The suites do include this as an issue. The technical considerations of the various projects and the solutions doesn't set out a framework of who does what when necessarily, or who shoulders those costs. It's more of a collaborative view. So a city may take on any portion of a project at any time. That said, it is valuable in the overall solution. I don't think it creates any, I'll say, interim harm, if you will. And I think I'd like Houston Engineering, Chris, to maybe speak to that as well, because they do review these along with district staff.
Mr. Engineer, Chris?
Thank you, Board of Managers. Yeah, Nick is correct on that. The proposed effort that they have there on 4th Street was part of that suite of projects. Generally, what we've approached that overall suite of projects with was a preference to try to do some of the storage projects along the way, so that when you have increased conveyance, that you have a place to put the water. That said, with this particular project, the city did modeling, and we confirmed with our own modeling that even though they are increasing conveyance going downstream, it's actually going to occur early on in the rainfall, such that it's going to come in before the bigger amount of water is coming upstream from Roseville from the south. So the flow isn't going to line up with the other big flow, and it actually is beneficial for it to come earlier to get out of the way before the bigger amount of flow comes from the south. So in that regard, there's no need to have any storage completed along the system to accommodate that increased capacity. It actually is functionally occurring at a time that's going to be beneficial for the whole system.
Thank you. I'd also point out, Mr. Chair, that this is a 1-to-7 match. So, we're part of it, but we're certainly not the major contributor for funding. So I support this proposal.
Manager Wagaman?
I have one last question on the way. I'm not trying to pick on White Bear Lake at all, but that first pond, is that pond, is there a reason that can't be expanded? Or do they have, is there problems with that, or is there a reason why they're not just expanding the first pond?
Yeah, so I believe, part of it is that, the city has an interest in preserving usable park space. So I believe that's part of it, of seeing this adjacent lot being more of an option to have a larger or equivalent size BMP while maintaining that usable park space. It's my understanding that, the city also has several other upcoming improvements to the park as well, including an underground storage area under their parking lot.
Okay.
Mr. Engineer?
Yes, thank you. I can expand a little bit on that too. One thing to note about this drainage area that's coming in that they're trying to address is that for the most part it is untreated right now. There is little or no storage anywhere in that watershed coming into the park area, and the pond in the park area is pretty small. There isn't. It isn't nearly large enough to accommodate that flow of water through there. And even with the what they're proposing here for storage, it's going to help the issue, but it's not going to solve the entire issue, just because there's so much water and so little room for storage in that whole watershed. So their approach is to try to pick off a little here, a little there, to try to make things better, both from water quality and from that flow of water and the erosion that it's causing that issue. So, the township has indicated, as Will is stating, that this isn't the last thing they're intending to do. They have more efforts to pick away that problem.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'll also note that Mr. Reed from the township is here today, and
We'll get to that next here.
would encourage him when that time comes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
managers, do you have any more questions for
No.
Will? All right, so the audience, is anyone who wants to speak to this? In the audience, I see that Mr. Reed is here from White Bear Township, and we have a member from our AC here today, Ms. McConnell, and do either one of you have comments you want to make to the public hearing? Now is the time.
I could just speak to the top. Good morning, board managers and staff. Chris and myself and the town engineer have had discussions, and I believe Molly, about this improvement project. We are trying to reduce, continue to improve that lake water quality. There is not much real estate on that south side of the lake. It was developed many years ago. Maybe the thoughts weren't, there wasn't a lot of planning in that treatment at that time, but certainly it's become a bigger concern nowadays. So we are, as alluded to, we are looking at maybe some more storage and maybe underground, under the parking lot. We just got to see how this all works out, but the town proactively purchased this property knowing that we could increase capacity to treat some of that water, at least at a smaller event, and then eventually expand that capacity too.
Any questions for Mr. Reed? And Mr. Reed, you're from the White Bear Township for the record, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, I should have started with that. Sorry.
That's all right, Dale. I just got to make sure we have the staff not chasing me later.
And Teresa looks like she's.
Teresa's got it. Any other comments? Well, please come up to the microphone and identify yourself, and we'll have questions.
I'm Terry O'Connell. I'm part of the Citizen Advisory Committee for Rice Creek. So to you, this probably is not the time or the place, but I'm just going to ask this question. Do you have any intention of adding any like greenery down closer to the shoreline to try to help with the cleaning of the holding everything back? I'm thinking of the sedge grass and things like that we're always talking about, because you have that really nice fence and it's a really deep, long, sandy bar, whatever you want to call it, you've got it. But I don't know if that's because the water level's gone down so much, which is what I kind of thought, but that's what I'm bringing up. It's just a question. And, it might be the wrong time. I'm sorry, everybody, if it's the wrong time.
Thank you.
Go sit down.
Mr. Reed.
I'm sorry. Dale Reed, White Bear Township. That is a great question, and we have done some improvements with that to stabilize that shoreline here a few years ago. And it does filter the water, but you are correct. The water is down, so there's more, not unlike, I'll say 10 years ago. Same thing, water went back up, and we actually had to stabilize the shoreline. That's why we did it, because it was, it can recede and overflow too. So we did have some measures so far. We can always look at more in the future too.
Dale, Bel Air Beach has a long time been there. Since I was a little boy, it's been there. And it's been a swimming beach. And it should be recognized that's why there's a lot of sand to it, because it's one of the few swimming beaches on the south side of White Bear Lake. I can't think of any others except the ones in Birchwood that are public and very small. And maybe there's one over in Willerny yet. But other than the Ramsey County Beach on the northwest corner, there's really not a lot of public access to White Bear Lake. And so that swimming beach services a very large area in not only just the township, but the city. It's back there in that area. So I just wanted to point that out. That sometimes maybe vegetation will clash with what the purpose of that is. But any other comments from the public today? Anybody online that I've missed and with handshakes or whatever that is? Hands up. Okay. Well, if that's the case and we don't have any more comments, I'm going to close this public hearing. And now, managers, as the public hearing is closed, it's opportunity for your comments. Mr. Wagaman first.
I don't know that I have any comments.
Okay.
I think the questions were answered
All right.
very well.
Ms. Marcy?
Well, once again, I thank the Citizens Advisory Committee and the others that reviewed these applications because, as we all know firsthand, they take this seriously and take a good look at the results of these projects and the cost benefit of those projects. So thank you to them. We are going to, this is more than the 300,000, so do we take that discussion up next meeting?
I would think so.
Okay.
I would think that, I was, for my comment, are you finished?
I'm finished, yep.
So my comments would be this, that I did attend the advisory committee meeting. That's my chore at my turn. And there was a very, very active and lively discussion about these projects, because that's what the topic was for the evening. And I was impressed with the detail and the astuteness of the questioning. So I'm going to give you some comments that came there today. Why is this 25% over budget was one of the first ones that came out. Staff had some rugged questions to ask, to answer, I should say. Another one was that White Bear Townships was over $100,000. There's a limit to $100,000. Do you have a limit or don't you have a limit? Same as the budget question. Another one that one of the gentlemen had sat down and figured out what the cost the district was paying for the pound of phosphorus removed. That was interesting. For the Arden Hills, it was $13 a pound, and it was $30 a pound for the Fridley one. Another gentleman said that in looking at the Arden Hills project, he wanted to know, because of his life experience in engineering in the oil industry, why a inclined siphon wasn't used instead of the baffles they were suggesting. He thought that that could do the same purpose and much less cost. So the advisory committee was very, very, very conscious of the cost issues. And so when we take this up at the next meeting, I imagine that we'll have a lively discussion about that.
I meant to bring up the same thing and forgot.
Yeah, and so those issues. And so that ends my comments for this. And so I will move on to the next item on the agenda.
Manager.
Nick has-
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss somebody? Oh, Nick did.
Thank you, Manager Waller.
I didn't know you were a manager for manager comments.
No, but I would appreciate any board general or specific direction in regards to its future deliberation and what staff might bring to assist in that.
Members?
Personally, I think we should stick to our budget.
I would agree with that. I think there'll have to be, if you look at the figures just roughly, there's asks. These are asks. And that's been made very clear by the staff. Let me point this out. They're just presenting the asks. This isn't any recommendation from them one way or the other. And that was the same with the advisory committee. They were they forwarded comments, and even though they rated them in order. But this is $75,800 over the $300,000 budget limit. And the cities of Arden Hills, New Brighton, and White Bear Township have asked for $312,000, I think it is. Let me see here. So I would say that we'll have to have a reduction of $75,800 to bring it down. And I reckon that would be with the three cities there. Because one of the things the advisory committee asked also, very at the end, was that all the cities receive something, nobody be neglected. I think that was Ms. Tressant's point of view, and Mary Jo is a longtime member of our committee, also a longtime member, president of the Anoka Soil and Water Conservation District, over 20 years in each. So I would suggest that that's where it'll have. I know it's hard decision. They're all good projects.
Yep.
And but we can help, but maybe not as much as what they've asked for. And there's nothing wrong for asking more. You never know when you're going to get it. If you don't ask, you won't receive. So,
Mr. Chair?
yes,
Another-
ma'am.
I'd be curious about the pounds or dollars for phosphorus. How much, that ratio? Because I know that's one of the things the Citizens Advisory Committee has
Well,
been trying to.
that's where it came from, was the Citizens Advisory Committee. One of the
Right,
gentlemen,
right.
who, right at
Dave
the moment, I can't remember, but
Dave
he was-
Anderson put it together, and it was very
He,
informative.
this was, this fellow sat down and maybe Will or Molly will remember who he was. He's from Ramsey County, though. I
It was
remember
Dave.
that.
Dave
Yeah,
Anderson, Anoka County. Yep.
No, it wasn't. I know who Dave Anderson is. Bill Lazarus. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Molly. That's who it was.
Bill.
And what he did, and so to be clear here about what he's talking about, he's saying he's only calculating the cost that the Rice Creek Watershed put in, and how effective that money was for the cost. So he's very limited in what he was looking at, which takes a little more work than just. But that was a curious figure that came out. So, thank you, Molly. Is that enough direction
Yes.
for you, Nick?
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, then we'll move on to the open mic public comment period. Do we have anybody in the audience that wants to come up and talk to us?
Thanks.
Please state your name and address again for the record. Thank you.
I'm Terry O'Connell, Citizen Advisory Committee. I live in Lino Lakes. So the question I have is, you recommended I talk to Mike Bradley. I don't know how to work this, so this is why it's staying here.
You can't see you.
Right there.
You need to talk in the, is that it? Where we go?
Well, I can get it to go up
You can
higher.
get
I hope people see me then.
Step on the side, we won't be.
Sometimes you just gotta.
It's
It's very touchy. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you for doing that. Appreciate that. Okay, so a question that I brought up, and I believe, John, you told me I should talk to Mike, so that's why I'm
Correct.
here, but he's not here.
He's going to be back at the next meeting, but this week he's gone.
So you know how we want the work that's been done brought to other people so they can see it by signage and things like that. This came to my mind when I was kayaking around Bald Eagle Lake and saw, really, you can only see the wonderful work that was done when you're in the water, when you're down there and you're looking at it. You can't see it from a road. So I was wondering, instead of putting signage up, maybe if, like, the Bald Eagle Lake Owners Association would contact someone like the Peltier Lake Association and have them come and take a look at what things look like. This came to mind, especially Peltier, when I was I don't live on Peltier Lake, but when I was at one of their meetings, and the woman from the DNR brought up that dicot was being used, but besides the chemical being used, they should look at some restoration of the I want to say lawns, but that's the wrong word, going into the lake. And she brought it up, and I thought, well, maybe this would be a good way to reach out and maybe have them show and what it could look like. And so I don't know if we can recommend anything like that, or if that would be what you're looking for. Or the other question I have on the same vein is, we want signage up, and with the I'm trying to which one it is. It's the
Centerville.
Valentine Lake one, not Valentine. Yeah, I guess
Valentine, yeah.
Okay. You know, everyone wants signs up, and I'm thinking, when the different, how much phosphorus is being taken out, this is something that I think should be not just for the area, but for where they're located is such a prime area. 694 and Snelling Avenue. Granted, you can't do anything on 694, but you know those big signs that every city seems to have now, advertising this road's going to be closed or whatever, have, every time they clean it out, kind of put, this is how much has been done. And I believe one of them I looked up, and they recommend at least twice a year for the baffle system to be cleaned out. So it would be, and just add the total. This is for the entire year. how much was taken out. So I'm just thinking it would not just be for the citizens, because everything they recommended would be just for the citizens in the newspaper and their website, but this would be a much more visual. Can we recommend things like that? I don't know. That's it. Okay.
So,
thanks.
just so I'm not confused, are you talking about Centerville where we're going to do the phosphorus reduction program, or Peltier?
Peltier.
You're talking
Peltier
about
is the
Peltier.
one where the DNR, I went
Yeah,
to the meeting
okay.
and the DNR woman was
Right.
talking to them about it. So that's what I was thinking. And
Well,
sometimes a visual is much
Right.
better.
I just wanted to be sure I was clear. I'm easily confused at times. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Anyone else? Well, hearing none, I'll close the public comment period and we'll move on to items requiring board action. And the first one is the Rice Creek Watershed District official depository and newspaper designation. Mr. Administrator, Nick?
Yes, Board of Managers, the district bylaws require annual designation of the official depository and newspaper. Those currently are PMA Financial Network LLC, administering the 4M Fund with U.S. Bank as the financial institution, and the newspaper is the St. Paul Pioneer Press. Staff recommends no changes to these two designated entities. There is a proposed motion at the bottom of page 98 in the first packet.
Mr. Chair, I move to designate PMA Financial Network LLC, administering the 4M Fund with U.S. Bank as the financial institution, as the official depository of the Rice Creek Watershed District, and the St. Paul Pioneer Press is the official newspaper of the Rice Creek Watershed District.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item on the agenda is the Common Carp Program annual contracts. Matt, your turn.
Board of Managers, 1 second here. I'm going to get a presentation up on the screen for you. Okay. There we go. Yes, Board of Managers, thank you for having me here today to talk about the district's Common Carp Management Program. This is an item that you've seen in past years, so this is not something new to you, but this is an opportunity for me to give you an update on where our Common Carp program is. We talked about it a little bit at the recent workshop. Manager Wagaman, you asked about a status report. I'll be providing that today with these slides. And then at the end, we'll have a motion for an agreement for the professional services to continue running this program. So yeah, Board of Managers, some of these slides here are review. You've seen some of these before. I'll go through some of them rather quickly, but obviously if you have any questions, happy to return to any of these. So the district manages common carp because they cause water quality problems. Common carp are an invasive species from Eurasia, but the reason that we manage them is because of the water quality impact, not necessarily because they're invasive species. So it is the water quality issue that we're honing in on here with carp management. Another major point here is that with carp management, the goal is not eradication. We simply don't have the tools and the technology at the time to eradicate natural populations or wild populations of common carp. So really what we're trying to do is manage common carp below an impact threshold. Research has told us that the threshold at which common carp typically impact water quality is around 100 kilograms per hectare. In the Long Lake Lino Chain of Lakes system, we started out quite high. There's an estimate from 2020 there, nearly 7 times the impact threshold. So we had a lot of common carp in the Long Lake Lino Chain of Lakes system.
Could you just tell me again what a hectare, how much area a hectare is?
Oh, hectare.
Hectare's 2.5 acres.
2.5?
Thank you, Manager Waller. I would
You're
not
welcome.
have come up with that
Thank you.
figure. Thank you. Again, so our goal here with the program is to manage the common carp population below that threshold. So we're here mostly talking about the Long Lake Lino Chain of Lakes system. If you looked at the memo that was handed out, you'll see that there's going to be some additional work being done this year on the Peltier-Centerville system and also on Howard Lake. But the majority of the work that the district continues to do with common carp is on the Long Lake Lino Chain of Lakes system. We refer to it as a system because the common carp move between these two areas, the Long Lake system and the Lino Chain of Lakes system or area, annually. So typically the way that it works is that the majority of the common carp in the system are in Long Lake in the winter. They move up Rice Creek to the Lino Chain of Lakes in the spring. During the summer, they're kind of moving back and forth between these two areas. And then in the fall, they return to Long Lake. Long Lake is a deeper lake, not subject to winter kill typically, where the Lino Chain of Lakes is shallow and often subject to winter kill, so they don't want to stay there during the winter. Again, the reason that we're managing common carp here is because of their impact to water quality. I could show you some graphs of water quality data from Long Lake, and this is Baldwin Lake and the Lino Chain. But you know, the picture tells the story here. Algae blooms are common, sometimes intense in these systems. The district adopted a common carp management plan in 2018. Recall that early on, some of that work was funded by a Clean Water Fund grant. That was the Long Lake Targeted Watershed grant. We revised this plan in 2022, but this continues to guide our actions in this system. A summary of this management plan is that we're focused on two primary things. One is removing adult carp from the system, at least 50% annually, and suppressing recruitment by blocking access to spawning and nursery habitat areas. We're constantly focused on effective, efficient, and reliable methods for managing carp. Those are the three keywords. In our management actions, we want to consistently implement this program, but we're flexible in our approach and changing our tools based on those three keywords: effective, efficient, and reliable. Here's the big summary. I'm starting with this, and then I'll provide a few more slides after this, but the district started doing carp management in about 2016. That was really more of a program development time frame. We adopted a management plan in 2018, and then full program implementation started in 2019. And since then, we've been quite aggressive, again, trying to remove at least 50% of the adult population. So that's what this table shows here, is the total numbers of adult carp removed from the Long Lake Lino Chain of Lakes system. So since we've started, we've removed nearly 56,000 carp. That's not pounds, that's carp. If you multiply that by an average weight, that brings us at about 335,000 pounds of carp have been removed from this system, which is pretty incredible. When I looked up what weighs 168 tons, it's the Statue of Liberty, to give you an example. Wow. So where does that put us for our management goals then? We started with a quite high density of carp in this system. 2022, we were nearing our goals. This past year in 2023, we met our goal for the first time. So we're currently below the threshold at which carp are impacting water quality in the system. So we're meeting our goal for the first time this past year. That's pretty good progress. Over the past few years, we've reduced the carp biomass by about 90%.
So Matt, just to emphasize that again, I know you said we had a program beginning in 2016, but we kind of had haphazard hit and miss nettings and other things before, but the development of the program has been very, very consistently successful. That's what you're telling us, right?
Yes,
Manager Waller. Much better than what we used to do when we hired some guys to go out and see if they could net them underneath the ice or poison them, as I remember many, many, many years ago. Yeah. So the development of the program is achieving its goals in such a short time and will continue to keep the population down. Am I correct in that?
Yes, Manager Waller, you are correct. There were efforts earlier than 2016. Yeah. I would say occasionally those efforts were impactful, but they weren't consistent. And that was one of those words, is that we needed to have reliable, consistent management every year. And we've achieved that, I think, with this program the past few years. Now I'll hit you with a few graphs here just to show you the current water quality conditions. We're meeting our carp density goals in the system. What does that mean for Long Lake itself? How is it responding to this? In 2022, so here we have a water quality graph going back to 1984 on Long Lake. That's when monitoring started there. In 2022, we had our lowest phosphorus reading on record in the South Basin of Long Lake. That was encouraging. 2023, it bumped up a little bit, but still quite low, and we're actually meeting the state water quality standards now. Chlorophyll A is still a little bit stubbornly high here, but I think we are making progress in the right direction. Same thing could be said for the North Basin of Long Lake. Note that these Long Lake is one lake, but two distinct basins. When we look at the North Basin of Long Lake, phosphorus concentrations were down substantially over the long-term average the past couple of years. Another important part of this is how aquatic plants respond in the system. As we improve water clarity and algae blooms become less common, what are aquatic plants doing? One way to look at that is coverage of native aquatic plants, and that's what these maps show here. So from 2020 to 2022 and then to 2023, the percent coverage of native aquatic plants has increased, and this is a positive thing. These native aquatic plants will reinforce gains in water quality, they stabilize sediment, they provide ecosystem services like supporting zooplankton that eat algae, many positive effects of having native aquatic plants in the system. In this past year, we've gone from 25, roughly a 10% increase in coverage of native aquatic plants. So that's been quite good. We've also seen an increase in the diversity of native plants. Healthy lakes should have a diverse population of native plants, not just a couple of species, but many. For reference, we did a plant survey in White Bear Lake this past year, and I think they had upwards of 15 to 20 species. That would be at the high end. But 5, what we had in 2020 is not indicative of a healthy lake. Moving toward 8 is moving in the right direction. So again, moving in the right direction both for aquatic plant coverage and diversity of species. Also wanted to note, we do monitoring in the Lino chain of lakes as well. Of course, the focus is in Long Lake. That was where the original grant dollars came from. But we are seeing benefits in the Lino chain of lakes also. So the district does water quality monitoring in Rice Lake. That's kind of right in the middle of the system and a good representative area to collect these data. Interestingly, total phosphorus has remained about the same. These are very shallow productive systems. But in the past couple of years, we've seen chlorophyll A, or algae, at very low levels. And we've seen that in the past, 2017, 2011, those were low years also. This is kind of, the Lino chain of lakes is kind of a boom and bust system for plants and algae. I think the trick going forward is going to be to sustain these clear water conditions year after year. And that's what we are seeing. And we're seeing the response in the native aquatic plants there also. In those bust years where we would typically have lots of algae, you wouldn't see any plants growing in the Lino chain of lakes. What we've been seeing the past couple of years is increased diversity of plants there and much better growth of native plants. And again, that sustains the water quality gains in that system. So all of these things are positives. This is just a photo to show you what the water quality looks like in midsummer. This is when Carp Solutions was setting some nets to remove some common carp, noting the improved water quality or clarity there. And actually you can see in the left photo, they're having to set it over, this net over some aquatic plants in some areas to catch the carp. So positive things happening there. The question earlier about dollars per pound of phosphorus was timely because I went through a little exercise here to try and calculate what this is. When the district applies for grant dollars, there are always questions about what is the efficiency of this, how many pounds of phosphorus do you get for this management action. Now, I would argue, and I have argued, that management of common carp is not really about a direct or a strict reduction in pounds of total phosphorus. It's more of an ecological shift. It's shifting the lake from an algae-dominated state to a plant-dominated state. And reduced phosphorus and improved water clarity in plants are all a part of that, but it makes it very difficult to try and calculate exactly how many pounds of phosphorus. But when pressed to come up with a way, we did come up with at least one example. One way to do that, and this is an interesting thinking outside the box way to do that, is thinking about the mass of phosphorus in each fish that's removed. You know, that each carp that's removed, about 0.5% of the mass of that fish is phosphorus in the fish itself. So when you do the math and you multiply all of the fish removed, multiply up to the pounds, and then multiply by that, by the percentage, we know that since we started this program, we've removed nearly 1,700 pounds of phosphorus just in the biomass of fish alone. Again, I'm not sure that this is necessarily the way that I would characterize the benefit of this program, but when pressed to come up with an estimate, this was our creative way of doing that. And this costs out, doing it this way, it actually costs out as being a very efficient and cost-effective way to manage phosphorus in a system. $500 to $600 per pound of phosphorus is quite good compared to other tools that are out there. Now moving on to 2024, I think the managers are familiar with this program, so I'll go through this rather quickly, but we're going to be continuing at our main management site on Rice Creek, just upstream of Long Lake. We're going to be using the Neptune and Nemo systems. This came from the company Procom in Poland many years ago. We've been happy with the way this works and refining and improving efficiency over the years. But we're going to continue doing that this year. That is our primary means at this time of managing carp in this system. Here's an aerial view of what the site looks like. Long Lake is actually up towards the top of your screen, and the Lino chain of lakes would be down towards the bottom of your screen. So the fish are migrating upstream, up towards the trap there. The electric guidance system, or the Neptune system, guides the fish into this trap. And then aggregated fish inside the trap are removed. We can talk more about this system. I think the managers are familiar with that, but if there are questions about how that system works, happy to do that. Managers might also recall that we've used baited box nets in the past. Carp like to eat corn. If you put out corn bait, you can attract fish into these box nets and remove them that way. That was an efficient strategy for removing carp in the past. But again, focusing on that efficient, effective, and reliable, those keywords, what we're finding here is that, and this is a little bit of a busy slide here, but I'll walk you through it. When we look at, let me see if I can use a laser pointer. Yeah. When we look at the Procom barrier and trap, the main system that we're using, as the carp population has gone down, as it has from 2019 to 2023, the efficiency, or the dollar per carp removed, has remained relatively stable. The efficiency of that system hasn't changed all that much. And that's because the labor costs go down. As the carp population shrinks, the labor cost to remove and manage all of those fish goes down. But otherwise, the system is rather passive. The fish are guided into the trap for removal. Box netting, on the other hand, as the population has gone down, the cost per fish has gone up. And at this point, we're just thinking that's not an efficient tool to be using anymore. If the carp population ever spikes up again in the future, of course, we're hoping that doesn't happen. But if it does, we could return to using box netting. But when carp are at a low population, as they are now, that tends not to be an efficient tool to use. So we're focused almost entirely on the Procom barrier at this time. Also wanted to note that I think the managers are aware that we put a barrier at the south end of Long Lake. You saw this by the New Brighton Family Service Center this past year. This was the construction of this barrier in late 2022, early 2023. That's when this barrier went in. This is blocking carp from accessing some additional spawning habitat to the south of Long Lake up towards the E2 wetland. I don't have another slide here. Aggregated carp at that system, or aggregated carp below that barrier in the spring, are also removed. This past year, it was only a few hundred carp, but we'll do some additional removals there again this year, tailoring the effort to the number of carp are at that site. Noted earlier that the focus here in the district continues to be on the Long Lake Lino Chain of Lakes system, but we're also proposing to do some work on the Centerville and Peltier system, and hopefully a carp population survey on Long Lake. I have a question mark there because that's related to water levels. If water levels continue to be as low as they have been the past few years, we're not able to get in there. But if they go up, we're hoping to do a population survey there as well. A note about the overall program here, and I've made this note in the past, but carp management is a program. It's not a project. This is a long-term thing. When we were working with some of the grant dollars from the state, our overall cost output was higher. We were gearing up. We were starting this program. We were buying equipment. Equipment was a big part of that early cost. But as the carp population goes down over time, as it should, our long-term costs should go down with it. And we're kind of entering that long-term operation and monitoring phase. I think that's where we're at right now with the Long Lake Lino Chain of Lakes system, and our costs have gone down there. Just a few years ago, we were spending $80,000 to $100,000 just on the Long Lake Lino Chain of Lakes system alone annually. That's with the Carp Solutions contract. Now we're down to about $65,000. So our costs are going down as we're being successful in the Long Lake Lino Chain of Lakes system. With the budget that we have in the monitor in our overall carp management program, that allows us to do that work for Peltier and Centerville Lake and Howard Lake as well. That is all I had. Let me make sure. Yes, I have the motion here that's on the handout that you got this morning. I'll make one other note. The motion is for a contract with Carp Solutions. We'll also be having a contract with Always Fish, which is the gentleman from Poland who helps us do the maintenance on the electrical systems that we bought. That contract is so small it actually fits under the $10,000 limit. So we'll be asking the administrator to sign that. So there will be some cost there also, but that cost is relatively minor. And happy to answer any questions the managers have.
Managers, do you have questions?
I do.
Ms. Marcy?
I'll ask them all, and then you can pick which one you want to answer. First of all, is the delisting of Long Lake or other lakes in that in the chain of lakes, when has the removal of sediment from the Long Lake sediment pond going to have an impact one way or another? I see your security information there. Do we also have some budget in there for security, because we had problems with that last time around? For public information, when the staff shows up to remove the carp, is there any notice about that so folks can actually see what's going on? Is there the possibility of doing a public event, or do we just get in the way? And as the program becomes more a maintenance, how does that impact staff time? Is it kind of running by itself now, or are you still 50%, 75% engaged in the program? I do have these written down if we forget.
Thank you, Manager Wayne, and I might ask for an assist recalling some of them. To the first question about the listings, the impairment listings, we're on the right track with Long Lake. I don't think that we're there yet.
Okay.
The MPCA uses a 10-year rolling average to determine compliance with the state standard. And they look at total phosphorus, but they also look at what they call the response variables. That is chlorophyll A and water clarity. So the past couple of years, we've met the state standard for phosphorus, but it will take a rolling 10-year average for the state to consider delisting. But they also like to see chlorophyll A and water clarity meeting the standard at the same time. So we're moving in the right direction, but not there yet. Yep. Related to, let's see, security, yes, we do have dollars in the budget for security. I have in the budget this year $3,750 for that. I don't think that we're using all of that, actually. That was probably from a couple of years ago when we improved our fence around the site. But we do pay for camera, like a camera that runs off of a cellular phone network. And there is a occasional drive-through of a security guard. That has worked quite well the past couple of years. We had some security issues or some vandalism issues the first couple of years. We haven't had those issues the past few years with our increased security, improved security. Let's see. With outreach and getting people to the site, we've tried that a little bit in the past, especially with some media outreach. There's been some press releases and things like that, and then maybe a newspaper or TV wants to show up and do a story. That often ends up being very difficult to coordinate because the CARP aren't on the same planning schedule as us. So occasionally we'll say, this seems like it's going to be a good day for a lot of carp to be in the trap, and there's going to be removal, and we show up and they're not there. And then another day, they'll all show up and nobody can be there. Carp Solutions is able to monitor that remotely, so they know when there's a lot of carp in the trap, and that's when they can send crews out as part of their long-term effort to improve efficiency. So they're not just sending out a whole crew every day and checking, and then maybe going home. Now they know remotely when to send the crew out, but it's almost on an every morning basis they're checking, and we don't really know until the day of.
So it was just a good thing that the CARP showed up in New Brighton the day we had our meeting. Okay,
Yep.
Got it.
Indeed. Forgive me, was there another
The Long
question?
Lake sediment removal.
Yep, the Long Lake sediment removal. That did change things a little bit in the area. Right now, we're making it's working just fine the past couple of years. Long term, it's going to be something that we have to be attentive to. In a high water year, it doesn't matter as much, but in a drought year, when water levels are very low, it could be difficult for us to operate the site.
And then the last question was about staffing of the program.
Staffing of the program, a lot of the early problem solving, like for security, for moving carp around, for site setup, I would say overall staff time has gone down along with cost and everything else as we've kind of entered the long-term maintenance phase of it. But it is still a little bit of a rush every spring just to make sure everything is in place and working correctly. And of course, inevitably, there's one thing that's not working correctly, and you got to fix that. And, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Manager Wagaman.
One question. You said that the chlorophyll and the water quality were a little tougher issue. Do you know why? Or is that standard? Is that the standard, or is there something different here?
Manager Wagner, that's a good question. A big part of that, I think, is the aquatic plant response. So you can have relatively low phosphorus levels, but a fair amount of algae in a lake if there are no aquatic plants. I'm hoping that as we continue to move toward better coverage of native aquatic plants and more diversity there, that we'll see algae levels come down. There's, of course, other things that affect water quality in this lake. The district has made great strides to reducing stormwater runoff. The Hanson Park project was a huge one. Middle Rice Creek restoration project was another big one.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that that continues to go down. We know that internal loading from sediments is an issue in the south basin of Long Lake. We're doing the alum treatment in Centerville Lake. That might be something to consider for Long Lake in the future, but don't know yet.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No?
You have a motion?
I would move to authorize the administrator to enter into a professional services agreement with Carp Solutions, LLC, for an amount not to exceed $98,900. The administrator is further authorized to approve contract amendments for additional work not to exceed 20% of the contract cost, which is $19,780.
Second.
And we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have a vote before the discussion here?
No,
Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Manager Waller, Board of Managers. Just one last thought for the those observing the presentation here, Matt. As always, I guess maybe a statement about game fish and any impacts that this work does or does not have on that.
Yep. Thanks, Nick. The system at on Rice Creek, just upstream of Long Lake, is only operated for a short time each year in the spring when common carp are migrating up the channel. So this is not a year-round operation. This is typically late March through mid-May that we're running the system. There tend not to be too many game fish running at the same time. Northern pike tend to run earlier. We do have some panfish running through the system about the same time as the common carp, but their different body shape allows them to squeeze right through the traps that we have there. The few game fish that do end up in the trap, and they are very few, largemouth bass, the occasional walleye, those get quickly moved through the trap and back into the stream, so there's really no take or removal of any game fish from the system.
Perfect. Thank you. And so we'll move on. Thank you very much, Matt. So we'll move on to the next one, which is the 2023 financial report, Metro Shooting Trust Settlement Agreement. Mr. Administrator.
Yes, thank you, Manager Waller. Board of Managers, this is the board's annual review in February of the level of liability associated with the Metro Shooting and Trust settlements. You established this a number of years ago. Smith Partners, as usual, completes a memo with based on some inquiries with staff as to the status, and that is in your packet for additional background and context on the matter. Obviously, Lewis is here to represent that as well. On page 100 and on 101, you'll see the three options that we've seen in the past. In 2023, the board action was to proceed under the third of the three options. So with that, I'll open to any questions or you might have.
Mr. Manager Wagaman.
Is it necessary that we pass it at this meeting? Is it a requirement? The only reason I say that is I know that Manager Robertson had a lot of interest in this and I think she would really like to be involved in the conversation on it. And I'm just curious if this has to be done at this meeting or if it could wait till the next meeting where she could participate.
Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Manager Waller. Board of Managers, Manager Wagaman, I would make a statement that I don't believe it's imperative that you do it at this meeting. I'll make note that this is for inclusion in your 2023 audit, right, which is going on right now, but it won't conclude, tomorrow. So there's probably some time to do that.
I don't know what anybody else thinks of that, but I just know that Manager Robertson has a real interest in this one.
I would expect she does because of her past action.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, Mr. Attorney, I would like some information. Let me go through this comment first, and then you'll understand where I'm going. We've done this for a long time, Lewis, and I'm the one who instigated this process of annually reviewing it instead of putting it in the annual report as a note permanently. And I'm very happy with that. But one of the things that we've done over this long process, and I think the only one that was here at the time are you and Teresa, Lewis, when this settlement agreement was made. And although I was in the audience to listen to it, I'm not a member of the board. And I would like, over the years, we've developed in the Browns Preserve, and we accomplished a couple of things by that. We've opened up the drainage for ditch number 4, but we also created a wetland bank, and we've got a number of credits there. And we've done a study since then to determine how many credits we would need to meet this contract if this contract ever was implemented. Now, we don't know that that's going to happen, but nevertheless, the Board of Managers has taken an action to protect ourselves from it. And so I'd like to see if you can, Lewis, bring us some language at the next meeting, because I'm going to propose in a moment that we table this to the next meeting. that would involve some way that we could monument the number of credits that we've determined that are necessary to fulfill this contract, if this contract is ever implemented. Now, there's a lot of ifs on this, but what my fear here is that somewhere along the line, Teresa and Louis will retire, and I'll be gone, and the rest of us won't remember what this is about, and well-meaning people will say, gee whiz, let's use some credits out of here. And then it might be some time later that this actually gets a contract, gets to the process where they decide that they need those credits, and the district would have to buy them. And I don't want to buy them. And we've created them, we've paid for them, let's keep them in the bank, but I want it monumented some way in writing, or some way so that future boards, whenever this gets resolved, and who knows, it's been 20 years already, and it could be another 10, or who knows. So do you understand what I'm asking you, sir?
Mr. Chair, yes, I understand your request, and I think we can work on some language. The only note I would offer is that there are a number of different contingencies involved.
Yes.
Even if there is a development proposal, it's not clear that the district would be responsible for wetland mitigation credits, but we could address that in the context of the resolution.
Yeah, I just want to have that belt and suspenders attitude about not having to buy if we did. And I think we've been very conscious of that orally amongst us, but we haven't put it in some kind of monument. So with that, I would move that with this item be tabled until the next meeting on the 28th.
I would second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, let's move on then to,
Manager Waller?
I'm sorry. Yeah, you hear my right-hand side. I don't ever look right, do I? I just
got
look.
away. You got the last word.
Just a comment, and certainly on the 28th, there'll be more discussion. To make note and echo a little bit about what you had said, there's a lot of ifs and assumptions in there. Attorney Smith made the same note, and it would be good for the board, in my opinion, just as you are with your dollars, to maintain some flexibility. I think recognizing the bank credit amount or any time we bring it up. But ultimately, I think the board, just like dollars, wetland credits are maybe scarce at some point, and you'll have to make a balance between public drainage project or retaining a balance for this soon to come. So I offer that to the board, but as well as to Louis in whatever information is developed for you guys.
Well, in my mind, I thought that we had a particular hard number for the Metro Gun Club in acreages, and I think that's slightly less than what's left in the bank. And so I just wanted to kind of have it earmarked, you might say, or some kind of consciousness there. And I realize there's a lot of moving factors here. This project may never have to need it, but until we determine that we don't need it or do need it, I want to hold on to what we have. We got at $100,000 an acre for these credits or more. I'm not excited about losing any. Although we might need a couple of acres credits for an upcoming drainage issue. We've discussed that, but the reserve after that's what I'm worried about. So with that, does that end our discussion here? What more can you add?
Manager Waller, Board of Managers, just to be clear, I think in the past we've identified presumed amount maybe, but there isn't a definitive in our documents as to the credit amount. Is that, I would like to ask your engineer.
Sure. Mr. Engineer, can you answer that question?
Sure, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We have kept a running tally of both what we have for credits remaining, what have been taken out, and what we project in the future might be an estimated amount of credits needed for various future projects. And so we do have in that tally some of our public drainage system repairs in the future, including on ACD 5362 branch 5 and 6, which go alongside this property. That's actually probably the biggest one that we have that is projected in the future. We have other things like, our work on Jones Lake and potentially South Hanson Park that are in there. We haven't, to my knowledge, not identified an obligation on the Metro Gun Club or Trost property in that tabulation. And the reason why is, as Nick alluded to, there's a challenge in trying to determine what a obligation is when we don't have a project in front of us, because the project that would be on the site is going to be integral to whether or what the potential obligation might be.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? All right, well then, let's move on to our next item, which is the Rice Creek Watershed District Facilities Vegetation Maintenance Contracts. Ms. Ritchie, good morning, Ashley.
Good morning. Well, I'm not quite that tall. Gentle touch.
There you go.
There we go. Good morning, Board of Managers. We discussed this briefly on Monday at the workshop. Just to recap, we are talking about district facilities, which are either district-owned properties outright or obligations to the district to maintain and operate facilities. Specifically for this, we're talking about vegetation management for the Browns Preserve Wetland Mitigation Bank, as well as the Walls-Taylor Wetland Bank, the Bald Eagle Lake Iron Enhanced Sand Filter Project, basins and buffer, as well as the Hanson Park Iron Enhanced Sand Filters and pond buffer. In 2020, we did do a prescribed burn for Browns Preserve. That's a lot of bees. And so we do have a long-term management plan for Browns Preserve. It follows 10 years from 2020 to 2030. That is part of our obligation to the state as being the owner of the Wetland Mitigation Bank. One of the management strategies for the bank is prescribed burning. So staff are pursuing a burn this year with Red Rock Fire. That contract is included. You'll note a cost increase from the one a few years ago. That increase is partially to include walls, but also to include additional monitoring. The site conditions, the material, the peat can lend itself to some unknown or unpredictable conditions. So we will have someone on site for extended times to keep an eye on that. That is for both the wetland banks, the prescribed burn, that's Red Rock Fire's contract, in the amount of $22,636.78. That does include the hair property as well. For the Iron Enhanced Sand Filter projects, there's, as I mentioned, two components. There's the Iron Enhanced Sand Filter basins themselves, and then there is the pond buffer where the Iron Enhanced Sand Filters are actually pulling water from. We do, as part of our grant obligations, have a responsibility for maintaining a native plant community around those pond buffers, as well as improved stability of those buffers. For Hanson Park, it's a large area. We've seen great success in the last few years. It's intended that this would be kind of the last year that we would maintain that, and then we would turn over that to park maintenance. That is part of an existing MOA agreement. So we'll work with the city through that this year. For Bald Eagle, it was started in 2020, finished in 2021. We've had drought conditions each summer since then, so we have seen a little bit of a struggle for the plant community to establish there. However, with continual maintenance of it, which is additional seeding and herbicide applications on invasive species, we have seen great success. So we will continue to maintain that as well. For all of the Iron Enhanced Sand Filter projects, those are with Davy Resource Group, and they vary in amounts. And I'll note in both of those contracts and their quotes, they have added time and material line items that can be added on at the request of staff. We have found in the last couple years that due to differing weather conditions and site conditions, sometimes the vegetation comes back in the Iron Enhanced Sand Filter basins faster than we can keep up with as staff. And so having the ability to add on additional time for Davy to come out and do that, that allows us to have that flexibility to adequately maintain both the basins and the pond buffer.
So,
So there-
Mr. Chair, it looks like there are 3 motions.
Correct, yep. So there are 3 motions. They're on page 108 in your packet. Davy Resource Group, as I mentioned, has the 2 separate contracts. Otherwise, I'll take any questions.
Managers, questions?
Well, Mr. Chair, I think we discussed this at our workshop, so I'm prepared to move to approve the attached Red Rock Fire contract for Browns Preserve and Walls Taylor Wetland Bank sites in the amount of $22,636.78 on the advice of council and authorizing the administrator to execute the document.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Mr. Chair, I move to approve the attached Davy Resource Group, Inc. contract for Henson Park sites in the amount of $27,010 and including contingency add-on work not to exceed $10,000. Not to exceed $10,000 on the advice of council and authorizing the administrator to execute the document.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Mr. Chair, I move to approve the attached Davy Resource Group, Inc. contract for the Bald Eagle Lake enhanced IESF. Iron Enhanced Sand Filter Site in the amount of $11,330 and including contingency add-on work not to exceed $10,000 on the advice of council and authorizing the administrator to execute the document.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that concludes our business. Anything else, Miss Ashley?
That's it for this one. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. You're welcome.
It's hard to believe that that Bald Eagle one was constructed in 2020.
Time flies.
Time flies. Yes.
We'll move on to our next item of our action, which is the permit and administrative fee schedule amendment. Patrick, it's your turn.
Yes, thank you, Board of Managers. Yes, the next item here is related to the permit fee schedule. This relates to the discussion on Monday at the workshop relating to the City of Centerville Joint Powers Agreement for inspection services. With the Joint Powers Agreement, which is being the next item, that document is being revised to be a living document. It's perpetual. It renews every 2 years. And so rather than including a specific staff hourly rate within that document, we are now referencing our fee schedule to include the staff hourly rate. So we are proposing to take the permit fee schedule, change the title to RCWD Permit and Administrative Fee Schedule, and include a new item on there that is a $60 per hour district staff rate for administrative purposes. If there's any questions, happy to answer them. Otherwise, this is something that requires a resolution, so we have that in the packet, as well as the updated fee schedule.
Well, Patrick, I'll move the resolution 2024-01, adopting a revised permit and administrative fee schedule. And therefore, it be resolved that the board hereby revises the district's existing permit fee schedule by approving the attached RCWD permit and administrative fee schedule, which supersedes and replaces the preceding schedule, and be it further resolved that the change is in effect as of February 14th, 2024. Is there a second for this?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, it's a roll call vote. Waller, yes. Wynett?
Yes.
Bradley is absent. Wagaman?
Yes.
Yes. Ms. Robertson is absent. Both of the managers are absent with previous notice. So that takes care of that item. So let's move to the next one, which would be the Centerville Inspection and Joint Powers Agreement. Terrence, good morning.
Good morning, Board of Managers. Thank you for having me today. As we discussed at the board workshop on Monday, before you today, I believe it's on page 22 of your additional packet, is the memo regarding the extension of the joint powers agreement with the city of Centerville. Just to kind of recap, this agreement started in August of 2021. So we're a couple of years into it now. It started as a pilot program as we are looking to collaborate with the city in site compliance for erosion and sediment control with projects that we have permits for. Now that we're several years down the road, it's been a success. The city is interested in continuing this agreement, as are we. So I did make note of two notable changes with this agreement. Again, we are installing a 2-year automatically renewing phase of the agreement, so we don't have to continuing come to the board every time there's a change with that agreement term. And then as Patrick's just referenced, the fee schedule is going to be a part of that agreement now. And then I'll just make note that within that packet, there's the original agreement, and then the First Amendment, and then the Second Amendment. And with that, if there's any other questions or concerns, I'm here to answer.
Any questions, members?
No.
So, Mr. Chair, I move to approve the amended joint powers agreement for an MS4 MCM4 partnership extension with the city of Centerville.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And again, we can note that this was discussed at our workshop. Yeah.
Manager Waller.
How did I miss you again?
Oh, dang it. I'm sitting right next to you.
On my right-hand side,
Yeah.
too, and I'm right-handed.
I'll make it very quick. I think recognizing the workshop discussion is important and the content there specifically to the value of this to the district is that the city has a more efficient enforcement avenue. That is the value to the district. So it's not simply we're doing it for them, but it is very much collaborative and a value to the district for those reasons.
Well, Mr. Administrator, for a change, I'll have the last word on this, and I think the value to the district is we're paid for our labor. I think that's a very important point about this, is that the district is receiving payment for doing the inspections here, and not the district providing inspections at the district's cost. This is a money inflow, not a money outflow. So with that, we'll move on to the next item, which is the Rice Creek Watershed District 2024 Informational Management HEI Task Force and Mr. Administrator.
Yes, thank you, Manager Waller. Board of Managers, annually, you do consider a couple of task orders from Houston Engineering. These are to maintain the electronic world we live in, which has to do with software subscriptions. That is your MS Forefront, a database that captures a lot of data for the district, and its obligations to report includes the Drainage DB, which is another database specific to the public drainage authority that you are and its obligations, and making those records accessible. And of course, these things, just like your cell phone, have periodic bugs and matters that need to be addressed to make them functional. It also includes mapping, GIS matters. Some of the nice maps you see and such are included in this as well. There are 2 task orders and 1 proposed motion to capture them both. That's page 135.
Managers, do we have a motion?
Mr. President, I would move to approve move approval of HEI Task Order 2024-003 and Houston Engineering Task Order 2024-004 and authorize the district administrator to sign.
I'll second it. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to the next item, which would be the JCON LLC partial payment request number 3, Anoka, Washington Judicial Ditch number 3, Phase 2 repair. Miss Ashley's back.
Yes, good morning, Board of Managers. This is the partial pay request number 3 to JCON LLC for the JD3 branches 1, 2, and 4 Phase 2 repair. As part of this pay request, it's including tree removals, excavation, a little bit of spoil management, as well as field and culvert crossings. All of this has been inspected and certified by the engineer. Remaining work, for the most part, actually, since this pay request has been submitted, they have substantially completed all of excavation. There is about 450 linear feet left. That's going to be done tomorrow and Friday via an amphibious excavator. Otherwise, what's left is spoil management and seeding and a little bit of site touch-up work as we move forward. Just noting that substantial completion date in the contract is March 1st of this year, with final completion being July 1st. So they are well on their way to completing this project and wrapping it up successfully. Partial payment, if number 3 does total $113,545.90. And just noting that the 5% retainage has already been subtracted from that amount. So with that, there is a motion on page 146. I'll take any questions.
I think.
Manager Wagaman, you have some questions of Ashley? No, my
No,
pleasure.
I'm
I just
sorry,
want to,
Mr.
no.
President, I meant to.
It's all right.
Actually, I believe this may be for the lawyer. The question was, there's a possibility that there could be a fine from the DNR, and my understanding was that possibly our insurance and their I'm drawing a blank on the word I'm looking for. Bond, thank you, may not cover a fine from the DNR, and I'm just wondering if we should be holding money in case there's a fine, or what the right thing to do in this situation is. Because we should not get stuck with the fine.
Okay, ready, Steve?
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Attorney, let's hear
Mr.
your
Chair, Manager Wagaman, I know there were also questions about bankruptcy proceedings. I can speak to those, but on the DNR matter specifically, I think Mr. Tomczyk has some information first to put on the table.
Mr. Nick.
Thank you. In regards to the DNR, they did meet on site with the contractor. Obviously, this is the contractor's work, and we would see them as a responsible party, but certainly wanted to be present to make sure they were addressing that. Ashley was present for that. It's my understanding that the DNR recognized that these things do occasionally happen, but nonetheless it needed to be cleaned up, and that they intended to come back and give a quote-unquote all clear when the contractor believed they were completed. And I'll defer to Ashley in regards to any other status there.
Yes, thank you, Administrator Tomczyk. We have been in communication with both the engineer and the attorney. At this point, there isn't a concern as far as trying to withhold any money for a fine. As Administrator Tomczyk noted, the DNR has all they've asked of the contractor so far to date has been to clean up the site. From all of our understanding, that concern would be between the contractor and the DNR, and the district's contract does address some of those concerns. Otherwise, as far as bankruptcy, the proceedings, we've been in close contact again with the attorneys. Rankin Union does have bankruptcy attorneys on staff. They've been in close contact with the filing attorneys from JCON LLC. At this time, there is no concern. Our contract stands alone, and as long as they complete it successfully, even if they don't, there are provisions in the contract that would address if they were to either delay or to walk away completely. The bankruptcy filing proceedings does not currently impact the contract in any way.
I'm crystal clear on that part of it, but Are you saying then that the DNR is saying there's no chance of a fine, or we're just thinking there's going to be no fine?
At this point, they have not indicated one way or the other.
Yeah, that's my question and concern.
So, Mr. Engineer.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I would further indicate that any actions that would have been taken out there that were done outside of permitting that would have required a permit would not be any actions that have been authorized by Rice Creek Watershed District. And so anything that would be done out there, I don't myself foresee any additional risk that has occurred for the Watershed District in being subject to a fine, based on the notion that the work that we have approved for the contractor to complete is work that has also been acknowledged by the DNR as being acceptable to complete before the project started.
I'm not sure.
Manager Wagaman.
I'm not sure that clears it up, but.
Yeah.
Okay. So as I understand this, we're waiting for the DNR to inspect the cleanup, and at that time, they'll tell us what their decision is.
Specifically directed to the contractor, yes, because as
Well, I mean,
Yep, so-
whether it's to the contractor or whether they're satisfied with the cleanup, and then they'll decide what has to be done, whether there's fines or what the situation will be. And so we'll just kind of have to wait to see what the DNR is going to do, right?
correct. And just to reiterate, at this point, any of the actions that were taken that would have required permitting by the DNR, those actions were not part of the contract or approved by us as the district. So the approved actions that the district has reviewed and directed under the contract did not need a DNR permit.
So let me clarify this for myself here. Thank you. So you're saying is that if there's a bond issue or a fine issue, it would be because a permit wasn't obtained for that particular action.
I am not familiar enough with the DNR's rules to
I mean,
speak on that.
that's kind of what I get the impression of what there's that if the DNR and the bond came out, DNR came out and said, well, there's a permit violation here, that would result in the need of a bond or to be used or something. What do you have? You have some comments, Louis?
Mr. Chair, as I understand it, again, deferring also to Mr. Kolbe as Drainage Counsel in this matter, none of the work that's at issue with the DNR performed by the contractor is within the scope of the contractor's work with the district. And therefore, any concerns the DNR has about exercising its enforcement authority is not exercised as to the district. It will be exercised as to the contractor.
Right. So that means that basically you're saying it's okay to pay this bill at this time.
Mr. Chair, it's my understanding based on all of this discussion and also Mr. Kolbe's review, that's correct.
One last shot. To be clear then, what you're saying is if they ended up in Chapter 7 or whatever, there's no way for that fine to fall back on the district. Under any circumstances, the fine from the DNR cannot fall back on the watershed.
Mr. Chair and Manager Wagaman, attorneys never like to say absolutely never, but I would say that it's exceedingly remote because the work, the conduct that's at issue with the DNR is outside the scope of the contract between the contractor and the district.
The only reason I bring this up is our business was involved in several bankruptcies, and we were told by our attorneys, don't worry, don't panic, nothing, blah, 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 and none of that worked out. We got nailed on every one of them, and that's why I just have a concern that the district is covered so that there's no way we end up paying this fine if they end up in Chapter 7, which is, I hope they don't. I mean, I hope they come out of it, but there is no guarantee that they will come out of it. And I just would want to be positive that there's no chance that we're gonna end up with a $1 million fine or something from the DNR that falls on our shoulders.
Mr. Attorney, you have another comment?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wagaman, again, it's my understanding Mr. Kolb specifically looked at your bankruptcy
Okay.
question and believes the district should proceed under the contract.
Mr. Administrator.
Thank you. Board of Managers, maybe the reverse view would be important here, which is I don't think our contractual arrangement with the contractor would allow us to withhold a partial payment in lieu of the terms we set up. Not dismissing your concern, Manager
I understand what
Wagaman.
you're saying, and that's a valid point. I don't know what the details are of that. I don't have the contract in front of me to speak to it.
Miss Ashley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to reiterate what Mr. Smith said, the way the contract is written, even if the bankruptcy filing were to change, the district has provisions in there in the performance bonds and those kinds of things to protect the districts and its investment in the project. So we have been in close contact with Mr. Kolb on this. He's reviewed that. He reviews it before it goes out for bid, and then ensures, once this situation arises, we've been in close contact with him to ensure that those concerns are addressed and that if there is any additional proceedings or filings that happens, how that does impact our contract. It's important to note that at this time, with them being almost complete, after this week they'll be very much close to substantial completion. There isn't much work left to do. So there's low risk in any proceeding filings changing. Low risk to the contract in the district.
Thank you.
So is there a motion on this item?
Well, I'll make it if Steve doesn't want to.
No, I'd rather not.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I move to approve JCON LLC's partial payment request number 3 as submitted and certified by the district engineer, and direct staff to issue a payment in the amount of $113,545.90.
I'll second it here. And any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
3-0.
Thank you.
Okay.
So now let's move on to our last item, which is you, Ms.
Okay.
Marcy. You're the treasurer, and so it's
Yes,
the
and this-
check register dated February 14th, 2024.
Exactly, and that check register is on page 152. And I move, Mr. Chair, to approve the check register dated February 14th, 2024 in the amount of $161,843.61 prepared by Redpath and Company.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion today? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Now this brings us to the items for discussion and information and the engineer's update and timeline. Mr. Engineer.
Sure. Managers of the board, I don't have anything to specifically comment on, but certainly I can address any questions you might have.
Any question, members? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the administrator's update. Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Manager Waller. Board of Managers, just a couple of things. Let you know that I am working through the particulars of the district's U.S. trademark application regarding Blue Thumb, Planting for Clean Water. That was to be transferred to Metro Blooms and had some complications back in the day, but it's alive again. I'm working through Smith Partners to see that successfully handed off. I'll note that the district continues discussions with City of Circle Pines in regards to payment for the storm sewer outfalls that go into Anoka County Ditch 5362. Not yet resolved or the invoice paid, but happy to say that there is some dialogue. Further, the Gallagher work on your salary schedule for the district is nearing completion. I gave you an update, as did Alan Johanning from Gallagher at the December workshop. Previously, I had noted placing that like a workshop after the meeting. I think it's probably best, and noting today the amount of good discussion and where we're ending on a time, it's probably most efficient use of our time to just include it in the February 28th meeting as an agenda item. I don't know why we would, it can be under information or otherwise, and you can direct staff as needed there. So with that,
So there's
any
no
questions?
need for a separate workshop after the meeting, and that's fine. I just want to make clear.
Yep,
All right.
yep, I think that would be best.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions for the administrator members? Okay. Manager's update.
I have
Manager Wagaman. Manager Marcy.
Two things, we're moving along on the audit, and you'll be seeing that in the very near future. And Nick and I Monday, talked to Representative Aaron Kochel, who is New Brighton to the west in Anoka County, regarding our work on Ramsey County Ditch 2, 3, and 5. She was very helpful and gave some additional items for us to track down when it comes to bonding. And I would also point out on the Minnesota Watershed agenda, it looks as though bonding is part of the agenda for updates, so that might be very interesting for all of us to hear.
All right. Well, as for my report, as I said earlier, I attended the advisory committee meeting. I think I pretty much summarized what happened there. Mm-hmm. I attended the subcommittee for Minnesota water policy at the Capitol. Now, this doesn't include the governor's bills or anything we've seen earlier on. This is mainly issues that come from the members. And the important things that they're worried about on the subcommittee, they had a nice handout. And I'll just tick them off quickly. Their legislative update. Was support for voluntary private well testing by volunteer groups and support for agenda efforts. Water safety plans for cities, pilot based on the University of Minnesota Department of Health report. Completed report to the legislature. 3, the retention of urban stormwater and protecting groundwater from infiltration. That might have some interest to us because we're in the recycling business. Number 4, reauthorization of the Agricultural Fertilizer Research and Education Council tax on fertilizer. That will probably be raised due to it hasn't been touched for a long time. Number 5 was support of the University of Minnesota for improved water and agricultural precision. In other words, better irrigation with less waste and such, and where they can get that water from, with surface versus the aquifers. The 6 is a tax credit for the private riparian buffer lands, the tax credit for private buffer property. So when Governor Dayton came in and put all these buffers along the ditches, there was people were unhappy. There wasn't compensation for that. So this is an offer of compensation and a tax credit. And remember, this is proposed legislation here. Number 7, reestablishment of the Legislative Water Commission. Number 8, minor changes to the highest priority allocation priorities, including schools for the White Bear Lake. So why is that important? My local newspaper reported that our new elementary school in Hugo would need a 155-unit apartment building in order to get enough water in order for the children to have the function in the school, and it'd have to be built on school property under the way the rules are written right now. So there needs to be some changes, and I'm sure we're interested in whatever goes on in White Bear Lake. And number 10, I mean that seriously, support for an enhanced groundwater recharge based on the University of Minnesota freshwater report policy change here. There's another item that affects us. Number 11, complete the land management goals for water quality and quantity on the upper Mississippi River. Clean Water Council recommendations. I'm sure you're familiar with that, Miss Marcy. Number 12, keep our lakes clean, ice fishing waste. This is a hot program.
Yes.
Last year, the DNR began some preliminaries, but this is about putting some money for staff and for facilities. And so what am I talking about? Because none of this language tells you what's going on. Well, ice fishing is changed. It's not go out and drill a hole and stand out there in the lake as it was when I was a kid. You drive your pickup truck out there. You don't have an old shack on the lake anymore. You have a tent, or you have one of these trailers that they pull out there. And apparently these trailers are mobile hotels, for better. And so there's gray water that's dumped on the lake ice. There's what they call black water, raw sewage dumped on the lake. Trash, garbage. And there's no facility at the entry to the lake or to take these things in. So they're looking to have some staff out there and do some work. That's one of the good things about global warming this year is there's less ice fishing. So we can be happy there. The 13th one and the final one is about the salt application, another blessing from the warm winter this year, less salt. And the voluntary certification, limited liability for applicators, application voluntary certification. That basically has been stopped in the legislature because the salt applicators want no responsibility whatsoever. They want to be exempt, which is contrary to the entire law of and culture of our nation. So with that, I'll let you know that's what happened there. And they'll be having a meeting, I think at 10 a.m. In the first week of each of the months of the session. At least that's the plan at the moment.
So John, will you tell me what is this, the Senate committee or the House committee?
This is a combined committee of Senate and House together. It has Senator Weber is the House chairman, and it's Skip. The representative is from Woodbury in Washington County, and I don't remember her name right now. This is her first. She's a freshman this session.
Yes.
So anyways, but Representative Fisher is on this committee. He's an old friend of the district.
Okay, and another question is the Minnesota Watershed's person like Ray Bone or the new?
I haven't seen them in the room
lobbyist.
Yet in the meetings I've been to for the fall and this winter, but I'm certain that they may show up depending on what the issues are. That's all I can say about that. The lobbyists I've seen in the room, the issues that have been hot have been the one about the salt and the lakes, pollution, ice fishing, and of course the southeast Minnesota karst drinking water. So we haven't had the issue that the watershed, and none of the as the attorney in the watershed, Minnesota watersheds have provided us with a copy of their draft. That's the governor's bill, so none of that's been there yet because the governor hasn't submitted the bill. But these are just what they're talking about, bills that they're going to talk about.
Thank you.
So, yeah, and finally, I was at the Washington County Consortium meeting, and where are my notes here? Hold on. Here I am. And I want to thank Miss Anna Grace, who attended. Nobody ever sees my attendance, of course, but because I attend with Commissioner Miron, and so it's his name that's on the computer. The consortium was talking about the erosion that happens on the outward bend, and they were using the St. Croix River in this case, and what they were going to do about trying to stop that. It's the same thing we have here up at TCA, Twin City Arsenal property, or that we did down in Fridley's city campus, to make sure we put some rock in there so that we don't have a lot of sediment, and what you plant. And also was a long and very interesting presentation made by a lady. Teresa, will you remind me of the lady's name? Yes, and Connie Fortin.
Yep.
And she owned a company that had to do with salt application and basically truck drivers and other things. But over the time, she's developed a lot of knowledge about salt and how it goes. And her company was bought out by Bolton Mink. And so she's talking about looking at the design of projects so that you put the sidewalks, the parking lots in the sunlight, what happens to these water quality projects that we put in many years ago. The one I remember is at Target over in Lino Lakes. And we had the water quality as catches for the parking lot. And so it was a very interesting thing about with permitting from now on. That might be something you look at. And she was talking about legislation to say the need for considering the sunlight, using natural sunlight, what kind of trees you plant next to your sidewalks, which side of the sidewalk you plant them on. And this also is not frivolous. It's good common sense. So with that, I don't have anything else to confess today. And I ask for anybody else have comments. We have anything else? All right. In that case,
move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor to adjourn?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you.
Recording stopped.